Let's welcome to the stage Gaia Morrissette.
So welcome. I'm going to take you on an epic adventure. But when you go on an epic adventure, you need the right supplies in order to get there. So let's give you the right supplies so that you have a good time when you're with me and you're not freaking out. I promise, if you ate crickets, nothing I'm going to make you do is going to be as bad as that. Thank you for that. Okay, so the first thing is I want to create a safe, non-judgmental space because I'm going to be talking about pleasure and profit. Those are two scary things, money and sex. All right, so first of all, I want everybody to close their eyes for a second. Take a deep breath in, exhale, and I want you to repeat after me. I give myself permission. To become friends with pleasure. Beautiful. Open your eyes. I want you to turn to somebody beside you and say, I give you permission to become friends with pleasure. Good. Okay, now turn to somebody else. Okay, now the next thing is when we talk about pleasure, there's a lot of self-judgment and judgment that comes up. We've spent our whole lives learning about shame and sex. And so in order for us to have this wonderful adventure together, we need to make sure that we all feel safe in this room. So I want you to all close your eyes. Beautiful. I want you to repeat after me. I give myself permission. To create a safe and non-judgmental space, for myself. Good. Open your eyes. What do you think is going to happen? You're going to give other people around you permission. So turn to the people beside you. You're going to say, I create a safe and non-judgmental space for you. Good. And to somebody else. Beautiful. All right, I'll come back to me. Excellent. Okay. Now, self-care. In order for you to feel comfortable and safe in this space, I give you permission that if I say something that might trigger you, first of all, I ask you to lovingly lean into that trigger. But if you can't, feel free to take the time to leave. And I will not be offended. No one else will be offended. There will be no judgment in that. It's important for you to do whatever you need to do for yourself. Okay? So can we all agree to that? Yeah. Good. All right. This last tool, and then we're going to get into the juicy stuff. All right? So are we all familiar with Kegels? Yes. All right. The audience that Kegels together bonds together. Now, the men in the room, you also need to do your Kegels because they're important, all right? So we're all going to breathe together and squeeze. Exhale and relax. And push your anus out a little bit. Because that resets the whole system so that you're getting a full, proper squeezing action. You don't want to do it half-fast, okay? All right? All right. So let's all breathe together again. Breathe in, squeeze. Exhale, relax. Push out. Breathe in, squeeze. Exhale, relax. Push out. Well done. So proud of all of you. Woo. Okay, so let's talk about pleasure. So when I say the word pleasure, how does that feel? What's the first thoughts that pop into people's brains? Free, beautiful. Enjoyment, excellent. Vacation, lovely. Sunset, beautiful. Excellent, sex. Yeah. Not enough of it, beautiful. So you're first of all, I want to say you're a very enlightened audience. So congratulations for that. Usually when I say the word pleasure, the first place people go is sex. And they assume that I'm talking about humping, right? So we're going to explore all the pleasure possibilities. There's 3 types of pleasure. There's sensory pleasure, which is the 5 senses. We already had some like chocolate sensory mindfulness moments already today. Thank you, Jen. We have emotional pleasure, which is those feelings of joy and happiness, those moments where you're like, oh, life is just so incredible. That's an emotional pleasure. And then we have orgasmic pleasure. Who doesn't like orgasmic pleasure? Oh, good, no responses. Who likes orgasmic pleasure? There we go. So I need to define when I say orgasmic pleasure what I'm talking about. I'm not just talking about an orgasm that happens in the genitals, right? I'm talking about a building of those 2 pleasure, sensory pleasure, emotional pleasure. You build, you build, you build, you build. You have enough pleasure. Your body releases in an orgasmic release. And that can happen in all parts of your body. That can happen without touching any part of your body. It can happen, it's awesome, okay? So when I talk about orgasmic pleasure, or I talk about an orgasmic life, so living an orgasmic life would be drinking your coffee in the morning and being like, oh my God, this is so good, right? That your whole body, and this is part of that mindfulness part of life, right? And you can also find pleasure in the uncomfortableness of life. So in those pain moments, those personal growth moments, you can also find the pleasure in that because it allows you to expand to go to the next level of your life. So, are we ready to go on a pleasure venture with me today? Yeah? Good. Okay. So let's start with our sensory pleasure. So before I tell you to close your eyes, pay attention to what I'm going to do so you can see it, all right? So a sensory pleasure moment, we're going to do touch. So I want you to gently tickle your neck and your ear. And close your eyes, because when you close your eyes, you're invisible, so no one's actually watching you anymore. And you can't be seen, all right? And I allow yourself to close your eyes for a moment and just go into that pleasure. It feels nice. It doesn't have to be a full, we're not going to like orgasm at the moment, right? We're just going with, oh, my skin feels nice. This feels nice. It's all good. Good, come back. So when we drop into sensory pleasure, it helps us to make sure that we're mindful and we're present and we're aware at all times. And so we're in this beautiful human body that we have. And one of the gifts of being in this human body is our 5 senses, that we can interpret the world, we can take that data around us and just absorb it into who we are. And from a business standpoint, if you're more aware, you're more mindful, some of the things that I've seen happen is that you can foresee problems coming. Because you'd be like, and then you can course correct. And it doesn't cost you as much money, and your operations are running smoother, and all this wonderful extra profits coming into your life. So that's one of the benefits of sensory pleasure. All right, let's go into emotional pleasure. So I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to think about something that just makes your heart want to explode with joy. It could be a sunset. It could be that you won something. It could be, you haven't seen your best friend in forever. So I want you to just take a moment and allow yourself to be overwhelmed in a good, positive way with that feeling of deep emotional joy and pleasure. Because remember, I give you permission to make pleasure your friend. Can we feel that emotional pleasure? Okay, so one of the things that I didn't hear any like, and that's so good, which tells me that you are not fully in the pleasure, because sounds of pleasure sends frequencies to our minds. So you're gonna all open your eyes, and guess what? We're gonna moan together. Okay, so when we go, good. The vibration tickles your lips. So close your eyes and go, and let yourself feel the lovely tickles. And that frequency sends a message up to your brain, and your brain says, good, want more. Yeah. Okay. The other sound that we can use to do some reprogramming of stuff and embracing our life more is ah. Okay, so let's all take a breath. Ah. Allow yourself to feel the washing of the ah. Your whole body is like involved in the experience. Okay? Now, when we have, which first of all, congratulations. You all did very, very, very well. I'm not going to ask you for us to go and have an orgasmic pleasure moment with each other. We haven't bonded quite enough for that, all right? So when we have emotional pleasure, this is where joy lives. This is where bliss lives. And if you can't allow yourself to give yourself permission to have pleasure, there's no way you're ever going to be truly happy. And those are, that's just how it is. That's the bottom line, that's just how it is. And we've been taught that it is unsafe to have pleasure. We've been taught that we're not worthy of pleasure. We're taught that that's decadent and I shouldn't do that. I'm not allowed to have that. So every time, if you feel that way just about being in your body and enjoying life and celebrating being alive and all those things, and you can't allow yourself to fully engage in it, how are you going to fully engage in the rest of your life? How are you going to fully engage in your relationships? How are you going to fully engage with your kids? How are you fully going to be present and engaging with your business? So the third one is our orgasmic pleasure. So, orgasmic pleasure is where all the juiciness lives. And this is where we start to make big money. Money, abundance starts to flow. Your creativity. When you step into orgasmic pleasure, you are saying yes to creation. Because everything is created from humping. Everything is created from that place of sexuality and sexual energy. So when you can allow yourself to step into that space, and you then can learn to harness that, you can then put that towards your business. So here's an example of that. So because me and orgasm and my orgasmic life are just juicy and wonderful, and that's how I live, I'm like a creating goddess. Every time I sit down, it just like pours out of me. And so I was creating an online course, and it was called Tantra for One. And I was so excited because I was in that orgasmic creation space that while I was creating, I was having orgasms. Nothing, I wasn't touching anything. It was because I was totally one with everything. And I was one with the universe, and I was one with all creation in that moment. As I was like creating my little, syllabus and my sales copy and my curriculum. And as I was doing that, I was having these beautiful orgasmic releases in my body because I was in that energy. Now, to step into that energy, to hold that energy, to be able to harness that energy in a way that is honorable, respectful, consensual, that's a whole other story. And it's a much bigger and much more complicated conversation to have. But I wanted to really kind of bring you into these concepts of what could that look like? The other thing is, so there's the 3 P's. We got pleasure, we got profit, cha-ching, and we have productivity, which is, oh my God, I can't believe I got that all done. So, what are the 3 P's? Pleasure, where's my moaning? Good. What's the next one? And what's the next one? Fantastic. Okay, so fast forward and you're living this now, and you become an ethical pleasure seeker. That your whole existence, you wake up in the morning and you're like, I'm going to seek pleasure today. That is my goal, and I can't wait to find all the pleasure possibilities in my life. Okay, so now you're moving in a whole different way. What are some of the possibilities that you think that how that could show up for your business?
More clients.
Yes. Why?
Because they're attracted to your positive pleasure energy.
Exactly. You become this beacon, right? Everybody's like, ooh, she's really juicy. She's really happy. I need to be around her or him. I want to be in that space with them. So attraction of clients, big time. Anybody else have any? More creative, yep. Yep.
I could see getting through a lot more work and loving it all. So it's like not a torture.
Which brings me to vibrating panties. See, that was not on the agenda, but I just had to say it. Okay. So you can turn anything, if you learn, once you start getting good at this whole, like, I'm a pleasure seeker, you can make anything enjoyable, including doing taxes, writing contracts. You put on your vibrating panties, and off you go. Right? And you're like super happy now, right? And the contract, and the other thing is when you're in that space, when you're in that arousal space, what you're creating also has now an energy that people want. Because they feel, wow, I don't know how they did that, but I need that. I want that. This is the best contract I've ever signed. Right? You also have way more energy. Like you said, you get more things done because you're enjoying life, you're excited. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the brain and the biochemical responses that are happening in the brain. When we have pleasure moments, our body releases biochemicals like oxytocin, dopamine. It's a serotonin regulator. So you are bringing those happy, I just feel so happy and high of life. And that's what's happening in your body because your body's producing that, which helps us to offset the stress hormones that we all carry and produce lots of. It counteracts that. So you can be in that stress space, or you can be in the, ooh, everything's lovely space. And you have a choice. You can learn how to choose that, to choose pleasure. Not to choose suffering, but to choose pleasure, which is very, very important. It's our right to choose. And whatever it is that we're choosing is up to ourselves to be like, I'm choosing this because it's serving me. What is it that it's serving? And if it's no longer serving me, I can make a new choice. And I lovingly invite you to come play with me and to start making those new choices to be that pleasure fairy, the ethical pleasure seeker in life. So we have more energy. What are the 3 P's?
Pleasure.
Whoa, 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 we need the sound effects. Okay. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor. I'm going to close up a little bit, and then I'm going to actually open up the floor to anybody have any questions. Okay, so start pondering. Think of your questions, all right? So I lovingly invite you to come spend more time with me. If this was like, ooh, that was exciting, and I learned lots, and I want to learn how to do that, right? Come see me. I have all sorts of awesome courses that I teach. I have an online course called Pleasure Leads to Profit. It's specific on how do we get through those beliefs, those mindsets, those blockages that are interfering, and how we move in the world. Okay, so come see me, take my card, have a conversation with me. All right, what are the 3 Ps?
Pleasure.
Profit. Cha-ching. Productivity.
Oh my God! Okay, who has a question? Yes.
Okay, so first thing that came to my mind is, because this has happened to me before, the pleasure distracts the heck out of me, and I can't do the work. So I'm sure it must be a practice thing, or maybe that's in your course, but can you answer that?
I can actually. So it's like when you're moving from a place of I want to be able to harness this pleasure to be productive, to have a purpose, we have to kind of like tease ourselves. So instead of us going to the full plateau of an orgasmic release, so to speak, it needs to be, okay, I'm tingly, right? The sensation is I'm tingly. And it's like, I got it building, but I can still focus. I still know my name. I can still walk. Right? Like, so the key is that when you're using pleasure and you're using that energy, orgasmic pleasure, emotional pleasure, or sensory pleasure, you just don't want to go as deep into it. Okay, so that's the key. Now, if you're like, oh my God, this is so good, and I don't want to not go there, then allow yourself to go have a little happy little self-exploration break.
You can't focus on work anymore.
But that's about training.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that's part of the mindset. That's part of the training. That was a great question. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Yes.
So, yes to everything, obviously. Obviously. But, so my most productive times are when I'm like taking I call them 2 back work days, where I take 2 baths in my work day, and I get so much done, right? But, so I'm totally cool to sink into that, almost to the point where I'm like, is this too much pleasure? So I love it. No, I know the answer is always no. And I love it, and my most productive months in business have been when I've fully done that. But then I've actually had months where in my world, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing the same pleasure point, like we're reaching the same expansion of pleasure, but then the profits don't always match. Maybe the productivity does, but there's, I think for some people starting it, they're like, oh, so when does this kind of balance out, and when does this kind of become constant in a way, right? Like, I'm kind of asking this with a little tongue in cheek. I'm sure you can pick up one, but how do you account for that when the mind wants to understand? Like, did the same thing with a different result?
Well, first of all, it's about what your intention was. Were you very clear on your intention?
Yeah.
Is there other things that are playing out into self-sabotage is another part of that. That happens often when we start talking about pleasure possibilities. So you could go into that place of all of a sudden making a lot of money because you've been having orgasms all over the place. And then your brain's going to be like, well, that's not okay. Like, I can't do that. I'm not allowed to do that. That's not all right. So then energetically, we'll shift. We may still be having orgasms all over the place, but our energy and our intention, because of just that simple, and it's more complicated than that, but that simple belief system that says, I'm not allowed to be successful, will interfere.
I mean, I'm sharing this to also have a discussion, but this is also coming at a time where I did manifest this thing, and then I got the thing, and then I was like, holy crap, I got the thing. And so there's always this like subtle saboteur that comes in. It's like, don't expect much more, right? So
there's your answer.
yeah.
There's your answer
So
of
I'm
what.
like, oh yeah, what was different? And I couldn't, like as you're saying it, but yeah, definitely. 'Cause I
Good.
got what I wanted.
Yeah, and that the core of us, we've all been taught that we aren't worthy of having the life that we want to have. Period. All right, one more question before they kick me off the stage.
My question is, are you transforming what you need to do into pleasure? Or are you just doing things that you enjoy that will result in profit and productivity? So am I changing my mindset to see that if I do this, it'll make me have profit? And, you know.
It's a combination of both of those things, right? So there's the energy of productivity and profit and including pleasure happens with, okay, I'm going to go out and live my life and be pleasurable, and I'm going to enjoy everything that's going on in our lives, right? So there's that aspect, which then helps you just see things in a way that's more clear, right? And you make different choices because you're in a different headspace. But then there's also taking the activities and the things that you don't love and that you don't like and changing the energy in the relationship with those things by now making them pleasurable. Right? So I think it's a combination of both of those things, right? It's not one or the other. All right. So, what's the 3 Ps?
Pleasure. Profit. Cha-ching. Productivity.
And thank you.